Hello everybody and welcome to NBL Overtime. 3 teams have clinched playoff spots, and they're the same 3 teams that have been atop the ladder for so long, but who gets the all-important minor premiership? Plenty to get into, high scoring, high crowds, and of course that fight for 4th. Currently Adelaide's and Brisbane have hit a road slump, but the Illawarra Hawks continue to somehow give themselves an opportunity. Hashtag NBL Overtime to get involved. I'm Cameron Luke and I'm joined by Corey Homicide Williams. Whose jersey is that?
Listen.
As I welcome you in.
First of all, shout out the basketball jersey. Let me tell you.
Straight up with the
straight up.
Straight up.
This is Michael Jordan's jersey.
Are you sure?
Well, guess what? Funny enough, number 45. We'll get into that later. But there's somebody else that wore the great 45.
Yeah, I know.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Liam Santa Maria, welcome to you. What a huge weekend of hoops.
Yep.
And Thursday night, we'll get into it shortly. So much going on. The nominees were awarded, or at least announced today, to which you're a huge part of. So plenty to get into, but this is an exciting time of the year.
Yeah, no, it is. And we thought it would go right down to the wire for all the playoff spots, but no, we've got 3 locked in. And now 2 battles, one for the regular season champs and one for the 4th spot. Let's go.
High scoring, high intensity, high drama, and what a weekend it was, Melbourne United. Well, the uniqueness of the competition means that Sydney and Melbourne both played the same team twice, and they both got the win, and Melbourne United had to go on Friday night to get the job done over New Zealand, and they did it in such a huge way. But it's the kind of weekend full of highlights, but full of huge high-pressure moments from some of the best. And if we look straight up here, this was a very good game.
It was, and you know, Randall really stepped up and was a huge part of their offense throughout the week, as Corey called for last week, and that one went right down to the emotion there.
The emotion on Andrew Bogut when they were able to get that stop down the stretch to hold on to the win was massive. And then, of course, this was really... That 4 minutes to end the first quarter of that game was one of the most remarkable watching of the NBL all year. New Zealand just lost all intensity, and they were just bouncing it in from anywhere, United.
Yeah. Melbourne. Oh, look at that one! I love that.
That's for you, Homicide.
That was huge.
Well, that's when the 3 really locked it up, and this was leading to a huge weekend. Of course, you know, this game, Adelaide needed to get the win, knowing that Brisbane was slightly faltering. They went on the road, and Cairns have been better, but, you know, desperate teams win. And then, of course, back here on Sunday, Sydney's first quarter was outstanding. Bang!
Yeah, Jerome Randall once again, and they just controlled this from start to finish, the Kings, and they've been struggling to back up. Kevin Lish was big at both ends of the floor, but, yeah, they just took care of business.
What did you make of still these uniforms? Cedric Jackson was outstanding last night. These uniforms still somewhat bemusing because I know it's a City jersey, but to have 2 different colours always seems weird when it's on a court. We see it with Indiana Pacers in the NBA, and the Illawarra Hawks have done the same thing. And then the handoff, really, Sunday night hoops, Corey Webster, bang, forces overtime. In New Zealand, we questioned how they were going to roll up on a Sunday after that disappointing Friday night game, but they were really good. But late, Casper Ware and DJ Kennedy took over.
Yeah, definitely. It was a great game by the home team. It was even better when you have a guy like DJ Kennedy putting up those numbers that he did. Mitch McCarron putting those numbers up. Huge shot by David Barlow. You know, at the end of the day, this is a team, okay? A lot of times, certain players, Casper Ware can't do it every night. He had an off night. Shea Elite played great defense on him, as we call that game. And that's when other players have to step up, and 2 key players stepped up. DJ Kennedy has been outstanding for them over the last 3 or 4 games, playing big-time minutes and showing up.
He spoke in the media 2 weeks ago. I think there was an article in The Age where he spoke about being more aggressive, and a conversation with Dean Vickerman suggested that for them to get the most out of DJ Kennedy, he has to be aggressive. He's noticeably more aggressive in the last couple of weeks. I think it started probably in the first half against Illawarra, but that Adelaide game where he's just like, you know, defensive rebound, his ability to push the ball, get 2 feet in the paint, just opens it up. And it's a much different DJ Kennedy we're seeing right now than what we might have seen a month, even 6 weeks ago in that first half of the year.
Yeah, but there's also some kind of strategic changes that have happened as well, you know, putting him in the starting lineup for one, running plays for him early. Yes, he's electric in transition and that's where he's at his best, but they've been running some sets in their first few possessions where they try to get him going downhill, get the ball in his hands, get him making plays, and he's a really, really talented baller, and if he can play up to this level throughout the rest of the season, they're going to be really hard to beat.
Now, something that happened over the weekend, not only close games and wonderful games and playoff spots being clinched, but The scoring is at an all-time high, highest in the last 10 years. It's going through the roof as we have a look at some of these numbers. Just under 100 points per game over around 15 per team. You know, last 10 years, 7 teams scored over 100 points over the course of the weekend. We're seeing noticeable run and gun games compared to not just, you know, 1 or 2 over the weekend, but a lot of these games are high intensity, high octane, and that's what fans want to see. Does anyone have a theory as to why we're seeing scores so high?
I know you do.
I do.
I want to hear your one first.
Right. So this is my theory on why scores are so high in the NBL.
Let's hear it.
And I don't know if the NBL keeps this stat, but the crowds are also at an all-time high. Okay.
Okay.
So the intensity within and the vibe within and the excitement and the loudness of the arenas at an all-time high. Adrenaline is coursing through the veins of these players, and rather than slow it and grind it down, I think it's adding. Right, to the pace of games.
Really?
And I think if there's a statistic, and I'd love it if the NBL actually keep this, I probably should have asked before I got here, but if there's a pace of play stat that they've kept in other sports and other NBA leagues and NBA obviously around the world, I think you'll see that the pace, because of the excitement and the loudness of the crowd and the size of the crowds, means that they're getting up more and they're getting more shots on the ring. And the more shots you get up, the more chance of baskets being scored.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think also teams are definitely playing with more pace, and that's coming from overseas, Europe, and the NBA. Teams are playing like that. More three-point shooting, better three-point shooting. I think also, honestly, I think the refs, the refereeing and the changes to the rules and everything that they've done over the last 3 years or 4 years has been focused around opening the game up. Right, and freeing it up. So one thing that they've done, I think, pretty well over the last 2 or 3 years, they cleaned up the pick and roll stuff. And as a result, you see guys like Melo, Trimble, Casper Ware, Jerome Randall able to lead their team's offense off that kind of action. They do it a lot in Illawarra as well, who are running up big scores. And then you think about like the unsportsmanlike call. People have feelings about it, but the idea of it is to keep the game moving and free it up. So professional fouls that used to just stop the play in the backcourt, and they don't happen anymore. The game is about, goes up and down a little bit.
And also, we've got the highest level of play and basketballers we've had in the last decade. And the talent's at an all-time high. So if the talent's high, the confidence is high, and the ability to take the game on is no doubt an all-time high since, of course, 2010 when this man won an MVP. What do you think?
I think you both are right. It's a combination of both. You know, obviously, you'll play harder. You want to play more up-tempo and fast-paced when there's a huge crowd. That plays a big part of it. You're more hype. You're hype and ready to go. That adrenaline is flowing. And with what you said, the game is more free-flowing, more three-point shots, better three-point shooters hitting shots. So you have a chance to hit 100.
I reckon also, like, there was a period of time when Perth and New Zealand were just dominating and winning championships. And the idea was if you just be the best and most hard-nosed defensive team, you'll win. Whereas now, like we saw with Melbourne, like Melbourne and Adelaide last year, they showed... Now, with the talent at an all-time high, you need to be up the top 3 in both of those things if you're going to win it. So all the teams are trying to do that. Even Cairns, I mean, they made the change. Aaron Fern out, a defensive-minded coach. They were great defensively, but they couldn't get buckets. And Mike Kelly comes in and opens it up, more scoring.
Great point. You always copy the leader. You copy the team that wins a championship. And Melbourne were running gun last year, and the only other team that probably were better at it last year was Adelaide, who fell 40 minutes short of winning a grand final as well. So the two best teams from last year, there's so much copycats. And the best players in the league, well, I mean, not every single one, as we'll get to our award nominees in our revised predictions shortly, but,
revised predictions.
Well, every week. But, like, if you look at it, Casper Ware gets up and can shoot the 3. Bryce Cotton, he can shoot particularly well. Trimble, Randall, the best players and the highest scoring players in the league, or at least the ones who control the destiny of their teams and the way they play it, they're guys who like to run and put some heat on the basket or on the ring, sometimes from the three-point line or even get to the basket. So they're high-energy guys, so the pace is always going to be quicker as well. Speaking about Jerome Randall, last week, homicide, and I seen you on social media before the weekend, of course, telling the Sydney Kings, pleading the Sydney Kings to let this man loose. They had 2 big games, again, away to Brisbane on Friday night and home on Sunday. And Brisbane were desperate. They went 0-2 the week before. There were question marks around the Kings. But Sydney, in 2 really good games as well, it must be said. This Friday night game was a great contest. Bogut getting above. Randall was back to his best. But these are 2 games that have huge implications now because Sydney are right there to try and get that minor premiership, and Brisbane are in a dogfight to finish 4th.
Yeah, well, I think one thing Andrew Gay said after their second win, the win back at home in Sydney, was, don't underestimate how big time these wins were, because this is a very, very good team. With 3 or 4 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we thought Brisbane were probably locked into the finals. Yep. We were talking about them as championship favourites.
Randall.
And the Sydney were in a bit of a hole, and for them to come out and get the job done defensively against such an, highly efficient offence, shut down Cam Glidden for really long stretches, and they looked in good symmetry offensively as well. A lot of Randall, a lot of Lish, newly in transition, up and rolling. The
very fact, and you made the mention a couple of weeks ago around Adelaide and Bryce Cotton, don't worry about only scoring 10 points. The very fact that he couldn't get shots up, and that's what they did with Cam Glidden over the weekend. It wasn't the fact he was missing a mountain of shots. He couldn't get any shots up. He couldn't get any clear shots. You were a little bit nervous about the Kings last week, Corey. Where do you sit now?
All they got to do is let Jerome Randall do his thing. It opens everything else up. Everybody else is still getting theirs. It's not taken away from anybody. Run some offense through him. Let him rock and roll. Like I said, he's superhuman. Don't turn him into a human. Let him do what he do.
I think
period.
They've tried to sort of find the right balance between going to Bogut, who is exceptional in the low post.
You can still go to Bogut.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that you just ignored Jerome Randall, but I think there's been teething issues with we need to get Bogut involved more at certain times, and when they do that, Randall takes a step back. We spoke about that hesitation a couple of weeks ago on a pull-up that we've been watching him do his thing for 4 or 5 years now and never once.
Well, he didn't have any of that hesitation this week. And remember, teething issue, when you've got a star-studded lineup like this, teething issues like that always happen. And they often will happen at the offensive end. And it comes from guys trying to sacrifice, trying to buy in, trying to be that team guy and turn down shots. We saw it with Melbourne throughout most of last season until they worked it out. And maybe the Kings have taken a little bit longer, but they looked like they'd worked it out this week.
As I've always said, though, teething issues when you've got an abundance of talent, good thing. If you haven't got the talent, you're not even worrying about teething issues, although we are getting close to the playoffs. Talking to playoffs, last year Melbourne found the momentum late in the year. They were outstanding in January and they steamrolled them all the way to a minor premiership and then that historic championship. And a lot of that was built on defence, and they were the best defensive team in the league a year ago. And Liam Santamaria, what we've seen on this 4-game win streak they are currently on, maybe not, and of course, higher scoring as we speak about, but the very fact they are just grinding it out and being able to have critical stops for 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even a quarter over 10 minutes is the reason right now they're atop the NBL ladder.
Yeah, it is. And we've talked about Melbourne. We're talking about Melbourne and Sydney a lot here. We should talk about Perth as well. But they are the 3 teams that are locked in. We know they're going to play in the finals. And, last year, remember when Melbourne got smashed on their home floor to Perth, who were at that time the reigning champions, and they went back to the drawing board. They did all the wrestling and the boxing and things, and they said, we've got to get much more physical. And they turned into the best defensive team in the league, and they rode that to the title with all their offensive talent as well. Well, think back this season to when they lost those back-to-back games to Brisbane, and Lamar Patterson was just slicing through their defence. And then they went back, and Dean Vickerman spoke right back to the fundamentals and said, you're all getting screened way too. Just fight through screens, sit down and guard the ball. Let's get back to the fundamentals. They came out and kept Perth that next game to 65. Now, at that point, their defence was ranked 5th in the league. Their offence was ranked 4th. That's back in round 8, mid-December. Since then, they've got the top offence in the league in offensive efficiency, and they're the number 1 ranked defence. And they're doing all the right. And they've built from getting back to their fundamentals defensively to now executing pretty complex scouts game by game that Paul Henare is putting together.
Now, you're going to tell us a little bit about the defence in a moment. Firstly, though, I just want to have a look at this because Chris Golding, we've got a graphic out the back. Chris Golding's come off the bench in all 4 of these wins. And these are the stats with him, of course, as a starter, which we have known for the majority of his NBL career, and his numbers coming off the bench. He was incredibly honest on Fox Sports after the game on Friday night. Says, I don't want to come off the bench, but you're going to do it for the team. They're 3-5, just under 14. So essentially the same amount of points, but their record with him off the bench, 8-0 for CG43, last year's grand final MVP. And you'd think homicide, that's exactly where he's going to be for the rest of the year.
Well, if you're 8-0 with him off the bench, why not keep him there? It works. He's 8-0.
Do you like his honesty? Did you ever come off the bench in your professional career?
Yeah, whenever I didn't play well, you sit down, come off the bench. It's happened before to me.
Does it hurt the ego? Did it hurt your mindset and your psyche?
His minutes won't change.
His minutes won't change?
He's a pro. You know what I mean? He's won. He's proven. He's the face of the league, and he carries himself in a professional manner. He's fine.
He is. He's playing exceptionally well as we head over to the plasma to Liam Santamaria. And We're going to talk a little bit. Oh, we're going.
Okay.
Old Santa's workshop. And that's a surprise too. And it's good to see as well the amount of tweets we got last week about Liam Santamaria, of course, disrespecting the NBL by wearing flip-flops.
That's your fault. That's your fault.
Take it away, Liam. What do you got for us around defence and United?
Yeah, well, I liked something that Melbourne did defensively against New Zealand this week. Obviously, Sean Long has been absolutely tearing everybody up. And that combination of Ty Wesley and Sean Long has been killing. This is one of their plays out of their horns action that they've been dominating teams with. And this is just an example of what they do with this play, where they come off Ty Wesley, he flares, they find him, Sean Long rolls, and they lob it up. And they've been doing work with that play all season long. This is what Melbourne did. I hadn't seen anyone do this season. They switched this action between the 4 and the 5 off the ball. So they had Barlow help high, but then stay high and switch on to the other man. So watch, we roll the tape. You see he'll now switch and take Sean Long, and they don't. This now turns into a play for Shea Illy, which is not what the Breakers were after. Here's another example where you see this action. He helps high, stays on Sean Long. Now Illy's shooting a contested mid-range jumper, and this last play shows that they got to a point where they got so confused, they were like, let's not even use that pick. Let's go to something else. And now it almost looks like a walkthrough at pre-game shoot-around where they really don't know what they're doing. They're not on the same page. So this is what I'm talking about Melbourne with their improved defence. They're back to doing all the fundamental things right, but they're also executing pretty good scouts that Paul Hanaro's putting together.
That play that actually led to a Shea Illy jump shot as well came out of a timeout. So come out of a timeout, and we're in New Zealand, who had a really good start to the game. Where they're going to go with this, get the crowd quiet. Sean Long comes over the top, possibly with a two-hand alley-oop dunk, and then they were able to run a little bit of that. And right now, that's exactly why Melbourne are playing so well and sit atop the NBL ladder and defensively. And that's as they got their last year, they had their bark and their bite late in the year. It leads to offence. And when they're playing defence this well, homicide, it traditionally is going to lead to them running the other way and being able to score.
Yeah, definitely. But outside of playing defence, you got to be able to score. So when you have people like Mitch McCarron, Josh Boone, DJ Kennedy, all year, we can honestly say consistently, Casper's been there, David Barlow's been there, everybody else. And Mitch has been there, but Mitch has stepped up offensively. He's playing on a whole nother level. So defensively, they got it together, but offensively, they're looking really balanced.
Not suggesting that Mitch McCarron doesn't have the ability to come off the bench, but he's played a hell of a lot better as a starter. When Chris Goulding came back earlier in the year off the knee injury and they switched it back up a little bit, Mitch sort of fell and go into his shell just a little bit. I think he didn't play anywhere near as well as he is right now, and that's another thing. I'm not suggesting that McCarron at some point wouldn't put his hand up or at least accept the role, but for whatever reason, his production as a starter dips just a little bit while Chris Goulding's doesn't. And that's a huge reason why when you make that change, they're still being able to be quite successful.
What did Mitch McCarron do last year when he played with Cairns? Did he come off the bench or did he start?
Started.
How did he play?
Well, he was, what is he, top 5
He's
MVP
a gun.
voting.
He's a gun. So, you know, you're asking the starter to come off the bench, which he clearly accepted. But when the starter's not handling his business, I do this, coach. I do this. Stepped in, he's been great.
Yeah, well, the other thing about bringing Goulding off the bench is the massive scoring punch you get. And scoring for them off the bench had been a bit of an issue. They weren't getting, Molar and Hooley, those guys weren't giving him much scoring. And when you were bringing McCarron or Kennedy off the bench, it wasn't happening. Goulding gives them a whole big scoring punch. And then you look at other teams like Perth, they've got that scoring punch off the bench now with Steindl. It's giving him double digits every game, and you need that. New Zealand are enjoying that with Weeks.
Not always the way, but if you can get a guy who comes off the bench who can spread the floor and shoot the triple, it makes life so much easier because that was what Melbourne and Perth were struggling a little bit because there was no one who could stretch the floor. So you've got guys who have to put the ball on the floor and attack the rim. And if you look at the way that Hooley plays his best basketball, Molar plays his best basketball. Last year they had Adnam coming off the bench and he's able to bring it out a little bit. Even David Anderson coming off the bench last year and his ability to step out allowed it to be open a bit. And I think a lot of that cramped, congested key for Melbourne earlier in the year without a Chris Goulding type off the bench was making it very hard for the skill set of the guys. And if you look at Peter Hooley, while he's been rimming out a couple of layups in the last couple of weeks, he looks a lot more comfortable and being able to get to the ring and at least put some heat on the ring compared to where he was earlier in the year.
Let's talk about someone else.
Do you want to talk about Illawarra? Can they make the playoffs?
No.
No?
It's not going to happen.
Well, they did.
They've given themselves every opportunity. I know
They ain't
It's
making
amazing
playoffs.
when you look at the ladder and you say they've got the same record as Brisbane. Mm-hmm. 2 rounds to go. They've got the same record as Brisbane.
2 weeks ago, we thought Brisbane can win the championship and Illawarra will win 9 games. And now, Thursday night, we'll get to that in a moment, but they've just kept themselves alive with some close, the win in Canberra where they just were able to overget Cairns in I think it was 74 degrees or something in the old AIS Arena, and they get the win last night, 110 points, able to put up a fair bit, and Cedric Jackson had his best game of the year.
He was really good.
He was, look at that.
The Cairns gave very little resistance.
It's against Cairns.
Yeah.
You just said
Are we
it.
back there again?
You just said it.
Well,
they gave little resistance, which means what? They didn't care about this game. They didn't come to play. Let's call it as it is.
Well, they've been such
that was easy to get a W there.
Yeah.
It's easy. Anybody could have beat that team.
They led by
last
5.
night.
They led by 5. Well, I think maybe even 7 in the third quarter. Cairns.
They've been a tough beat over the last month or so. Yeah, a tougher beat.
Yeah.
Well, they've won
they won 3 games after Homicide said they wouldn't win again.
But they really didn't show up in that game.
How many games left in the season for Cairns?
3.
You know what that means?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see what other job I got available that I can go grab. Oh, couple of weeks, that's available? All right, let me just hurry up and end the season. Me and Shaw don't get hurt, so I can go get this money somewhere else because our season is over.
But you know what? They're ending it by playing. Well, Cedric Jackson played his best game. Jordan Jet's been pretty good the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And Conklin's actually had a pretty good year, although he's an understated guy because he's not as flashy as some of the other imports. And I'm not suggesting he's in all NBL calculations, but his year hasn't been as bad.
Conklin?
Yeah.
Conklin's been good.
I think he's been really good.
Yeah,
I think that a lot of times he sort of gets left out of the conversation because of the fact that he doesn't exactly, he's not a high flashy, like we talk Sean Long, we talk the guys who put a lot of heat.
Yeah, he doesn't end up on a lot of highlights. He did this week with that one-handed
He
throw.
did a little one-hand pass. I think he's had a really good year, as you said.
They're 12 and 13, right? They've got a terrible percentage, which is the big issue for them, because even if they win out or they win 2 of their next 3, that it's likely they're going to sit there alongside Adelaide or Brisbane and miss out on percentage. But right now they're 12 and 13, and their run home is Brisbane.
Where?
And then we're at Brisbane this week, and then 2 games against New Zealand.
So one's in New Zealand, though?
Yeah, 1 in New Zealand, 1 at home.
See, this is the interesting thing, and desperate teams, of course, some can stand up and play really well, but we see New Zealand last week, who were still mathematically, after a 2-game winning streak, just not show up against Melbourne. So if New Zealand are done, we might see them in the last weekend just pack up shop, and you're right, you're talking about guys who are going to look for jobs in the NBL off-season and not get hurt and all the rest of it. We might see a team who want to have some pride and ego, and in particular at home, stand up. Or we might see a team that, for whatever reason, just gives up the ghost and gives Illawarra a chance.
Right.
Because I think Illawarra beat New Zealand in Illawarra.
Yeah, but their game in New Zealand also is in Wellington. And they've played away from Auckland a couple of times, and they lost to Melbourne in Invercargill.
Yep.
They lost to Cairns in New Plymouth. No, they beat Cairns.
They beat Cairns.
Yeah. So Illawarra are still alive, strangely enough. But their percentage is probably going to leave them out, unfortunately.
And percentage for the first time, maybe ever, is now a factor. It's traditionally head-to-head, which is always leads to some issues when it's 4 games and an even number against opposition. So percentage this year. So for the first time, rather than talking head-to-head, we are talking percentage. So we've got a fair bit of a... Really, they've got to finish a game, as you touched. You've got to finish one game in front of Brisbane and Adelaide, and I think that might leave them just...
But look, I mean, Brisbane have the easiest schedule of those 3. They've got Illawarra, Cairns, New Zealand, right?
Where's the New Zealand game?
Come on,
Yeah, I know. I should. Don't worry about that.
Well, whereas Adelaide, they've got New Zealand,
but
then they've got Melbourne, Perth.
You know what? You say that, though. You say that they've got the easiest run home, but they've got New Zealand. They've got Illawarra Thursday night.
Yeah, well, huge game.
So that's a huge one. So all of a sudden, it becomes easier. If they get the win, it's like, a bit of an easier run. Or, geez, they couldn't stand up against Cairns. And this Illawarra team, rather, are on the verge.
Yep.
No chance, though, Homicide?
No chance.
Who do you think gets that 4th spot?
I think Brisbane get it.
Brisbane? Who do you think?
Yeah, I think Brisbane get it. I think Brisbane get it. But, like, Adelaide are 1 game ahead right now. They're 13 and 12. Brisbane are 12 and 13. But they play, like I said, New Zealand, Melbourne, Perth. Melbourne, Perth, such a tough last couple of games. whereas Brisbane have a slightly better percentage. So
this leads us into Thursday night, because often a lot of the marquee games, Perth are involved, Sydney are involved, Melbourne are involved, and while those three teams have clinched playoff spots and Friday night's going to be big, Thursday night there's a double header that all teams who are desperately trying to finish fourth are playing each other, and this is going to be outstanding. New Zealand, of course, and Adelaide, and Brisbane and Illawarra. So all four teams are going to feature in an NBL double header on Thursday night, and look, I don't know who the scriptwriters are at the NBL, and I'm not even certain they're this creative, but in the end, it has worked out perfectly to kickstart this NBL round.
Yeah, that Thursday night is going to be amazing. And we're going to be much clearer on where things are at. And then, yeah, we talk about those top-of-the-table clashes, Sydney and Melbourne, Perth and Sydney, big round 17.
I don't know how often NBL players, I don't know how they're on their phones and all the rest of it, but if it's in a situation, the Illawarra and Brisbane teams will be watching a little bit of the game. They might know who's won. If New Zealand beat Adelaide, it's going to go to a whole new level of intensity, because all of a sudden it's like, well, hang on a second. Adelaide have just given another opportunity, and this is what the teams have been doing the last couple of weeks. That's a great Thursday night hoops.
I think New Zealand will win that game.
Ooh, wow. Why?
Sean Long and Ty Wesley. What did they do the last time they saw that team?
They smashed them. Well, they smashed
and they're
them,
playing home.
Yeah.
They smashed them.
Did they?
They did.
That's the game when we called.
They did.
Right, okay.
28-18, a couple of blocks.
Right.
20-10.
Right,
Ty
right.
Wesley. That's when, all that whole weekend.
Yeah.
I went crazy for Sean Long.
Yeah, and you know what happened then is that we all sat here going, New Zealand are the X factor here. They're going on the road, and I think they went home and they might have won on the Sunday. They beat Perth on the Sunday.
They beat Perth on Sunday.
And we're like, here we go, and here we sit here today, and they
You know what?
can't make it.
New Zealand, if they want to go back and do over that road trip the following week after that, where they lost in Illawarra and lost in Cairns.
Yep.
That, for me, was their season. And we talked about their body language, how they were still in that game in Cairns, how important it was for them to win that. And unfortunately, they're still alive, but boy, they're only just got their mouth above the water.
Hey, we spoke a little bit earlier about pace of play and high scoring, the unbelievable, electrifying play of guards in this competition. And Homicide, traditionally, I know you're up and about when you send a text message at 8 in the morning, and it's like, who's the best guard in the league? Who do you want to build a team around? That's what we've been asking you at NBL on Twitter to let us know. Hashtag NBL Overtime, hashtag NBL19, hashtag See Incredible. And as we sit here right now, Bryce Cotton leads the way. Who would you build your team around, Homicide?
Look, there's 5 amazing point guards in this league. All right, Sobey, Tremble, Randall, Cottonware. I'm going to give you my order 5-1.
Right.
At 5, don't look at my paper.
No, you've been hiding it like school homework for the last hour.
At 5, I put Nathan Sobey.
At 5?
I'm going to tell you why.
Tell me.
He's not a point guard.
Is he not American?
He's not a point guard. So when he gets the ball in situations when it's time to think like a point guard and make plays, automatically, what do you go to? You go to your original self, okay? He's a 2. I love him, but he's a 2. 4, Melo Trimble. The only reason he's not at 5 is because he's a natural point guard. 3, Bryce Cotton. Bryce Cotton is a 2. At the 2, I put Jerome Randall. And at the 1, I put Casper Webb because he's a point guard and he's a championship winner in this league. That's my top 5. And I would pick a team and I would roll with that man right there, Casper Webb. He locks up on both ends of the court. He makes sound decisions on offense. He recognizes mismatch. He runs his team and gets everybody involved, and he can get a bucket when you need it to.
I agree with Casper Ware.
Look at that.
100%, I agree with Casper Ware. And, talk to Melbourne. I mean, they're all great point guards. We're all great guards. Whatever they do, they're just all awesome.
That's tough.
But, talking to the Melbourne United coaching staff and Vince Crivelli, their CEO, and the like, at Summer League last year when they were trying to re-sign Casper Ware. And their perspective was, we think he's the best player in the league. We think he's the guy that takes you to the championship because of how much he can score, how much he can get everyone involved, how clutch he is, what he does at both ends of the floor. We see he's a nominee for best defensive player, and Boga's probably going to win that, but Casper would get a few votes. He's a guy that can take you to the title, and he's at an age where he's still got a whole bunch of great years ahead of him.
I agree. And I think, I keep saying Monday night, but it was Sunday night when they played New Zealand. The very fact he was 2 of 15 at some point, he still had the ball in his hand. And as a fan or commentary, I was doing the game for Radio U Boys with Fox Sports, he just had utmost confidence that he was the right guy to have the ball and he's still making the right decision. And when a lot of time you see anyone it is be 2 of 15, they start to question what they're doing, their little body language is down and whatever it is. You know, they come down, Corey Webster hits the game tyre and really... There was only one man in the building who was going to get it, and he nearly delivered from half court. And that's the sign of a superstar. 2 of 15, didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but didn't drop head, didn't stop playing D, and he had the utmost confidence he was the right man with the ball, and he proved that in overtime as well.
But Cotton and Randall are also that guy.
Exactly.
I mean, think about it. Jerome Randall, last year, what did he do at the end of the season? He led in points and assists. You know, so... I mean, this list is incredible. These players are dynamic. They're all awesome players, you know, but it could only be one.
Casper Ware is this close to finishing this season, averaging 20 points per game and 5 assists per game. And in the 40-minute era, that's only been done by one other player. Jerome Randall has done it twice. And he is on the verge of doing that. He's 19.7 or 8, 4.7, super close.
Okay, now think about this.
I'm thinking.
Look at those numbers you just said, right? He had a horrible game. We know this, to his standards. Who do they play next?
Sydney.
Have they lost to Sydney yet? Have they lost to Sydney in 2 years?
They've won their last 10.
Something ridiculous. Well, his first ever game in the league, Casper Ware hit a 3-pointer on the buzzer against Sydney.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome in, bang, right on Jason Kadhi's head. So he's been a thorn in the King's side for a long time.
And we've been talking about Bogut and Boone, and during the last week you were talking about Boone versus Sean Long. Bogut and Boone's going to be fascinating to watch this week, but Ware and Randall both playing at a high level, that's going to be fun.
I'll go as far as to say, as Casper Ware may never have lost to the Sydney Kings.
Me never.
No,
he's never lost.
He's never lost.
There's a whole bunch of Melbourne United players that have never lost.
Yeah, they would be, wouldn't they?
Okay, so how about this? Like I said in the beginning, before I even got here, I picked the Kings to win the championship. Okay? Give the rings to the Kings. They're 0-3 against these guys. They're 0-3 against the defending champs. Okay? As I said before, the whole world looked at me and said all this nonsense. That man, Andrew Bogut, has yet to dominate Josh Boone. Okay? What's going to happen Friday? And Josh Boone is playing great basketball right
really
now.
well.
Let's really get into it.
But let's not go too deep on Josh Boone just yet because he might feature in yes or no.
I'm just saying.
But yeah, I agree.
He's playing great. He's playing his best basketball right now. How are they going to win? How are they going to win?
Sydney or Melbourne?
Sydney!
Randall.
They're going to balance each other out.
You think?
Randall going to get his.
So Bogut's going to have
Casper Ware's going to...
You're saying Bogut's going to have to dominate
That's
Boone.
always the X factor. I told you that. They're going to finish third regardless. Unless, because of we saw the schedule and the wins versus Brisbane. Let's say Brisbane went out. They still couldn't catch Sydney. Yeah. So they're going to finish third regardless.
They could finish higher.
How?
What, beating Melbourne on Friday night?
I just told you, man. Listen, that water's cut off. Josh Boone got that.
So you're telling me...
And then who we got to play next?
So based on that...
Angus Brand.
Based on that...
They're not going third.
Based on that, there's no way Sydney can win the championship.
No way.
They can't win the title?
They got to go through those two teams.
So
How they going to win?
They can't win the title.
They cannot win the title.
Can't win the title.
They got to go through those two teams.
It is a huge
They got to go through them. They got to go through them.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with the troubles they have had, but I also like... Sydney could win Friday night and the whole narrative changes.
They're not winning.
It's a big weekend.
Okay, let me ask you something.
Tell me, ask me. Fire.
You have never beaten me. You've given me your best shot.
You've never given me an opportunity in one-on-one.
You've given me your best shot in Sydney about 3 weeks ago or something. We somehow find a way to win. You can't beat me, fam. You cannot beat me. You can't beat me. You're going into this game, how you going to beat me? What are you going to say as a crew? Man, they beat us 3 times. It's not like it's a blowout. You can be like, well, we had a bad game. We played good every time, and you still lost. You gave me your best every time, and you still lost.
But they didn't lose by a lot. Back down here in Melbourne, Kevin Lish had the layup with a minute 30 to go.
Took a L. What happened in Sydney? How much were they up by in that game?
They led double digits.
Double digits?
8 points at halftime.
You gave me your best. I won still. You can't beat me. You can't beat me.
You know what I will say, though? Last year, grand final series, went into it. Melbourne, 4 and zip on Adelaide. And there's a fair indication or a fair argument to be made that had Adelaide had home court advantage, they would have won a championship.
Had Josh Boone, had Josh Childress, Josh Childress been, we don't know what would have happened in 5 games.
So that's the point. So that was zipping 4 against Melbourne last year. I understand it's a psychological thing, and
But this is
I'm not ruling them out.
This one on Friday. This is the one you were talking about. You were saying you can't go into the finals playing against that team when you've lost to them all 4 times.
Agreed.
And this is their chance to make sure that doesn't happen.
And Melbourne spoke about that 12 months ago when they hadn't beaten New Zealand for a long period of time and knocked them off and back-to-back over the course of the weekend.
Now think about this.
Got it done.
Those 3 times Melbourne United beat Sydney Kings. Were they playing their best basketball?
Well, they're playing better now.
No, but Sydney weren't either.
Where was DJ Kennedy? DJ Kennedy showed up 1 time.
Sydney weren't either. Sydney are playing better now than they were then.
I'm just telling you. Money-making Mitch McCarron, DJ Kennedy, they weren't playing like this.
No, they weren't.
All right.
Award nominees are announced today by the NBL. Of course, a panel of experts, which includes our own Liam Santa Maria. And today, it is all essentially the players nominated. Now it's the captains and the coaches of each team that then vote on how it's all going to play out. And here's our revised little look at it.
Asterisk. Oh, whoever finishes first.
Oh, come on. You can't give us that. You can't give us that.
Okay.
I'm going to jump up and move this. I can barely see what I've actually voted for. There we go. Bogut. Yeah, okay. Geez, that's heavier than I thought it was. There we go. Can you see that still, boys? Yeah. All right, let's have a look at that. MVP, you got Bogut. Okay, so whoever finishes first, we'll cop that. Defensive, we all agree. Rookie. Now, this is interesting. I'm never one to suggest that I've changed the league, but I argued vehemently that Brian Bowen early in the year should be eligible, and I got told he couldn't be. Yes. And now he's on the list of nominees, and you've in fact said that he will be the Rookie of the Year. So slight change there.
All right, how about this? Frawling played games with Townsville.
Well, he was a development player.
Did he play in NBL?
That's the rule.
Did he play in a pro league?
That is no. He didn't have a proper full pro contract.
Let me ask you something. Yeah. If the NBL signs you, right, you import, and you play 1 game and don't play no more, right? You touch a professional floor. Are you a rookie the next season? And you played only 1 game?
Well, this is the difference between the NBL and the NBA. The NBA don't have the development player system, which we do, where we say, look, you can train with us and the like, but you're not a professional, which enables guys... No, it enables guys to be a development player and then go to college.
Okay.
Which is when that's the idea, right? That's what Frawling was able to do.
Look, there's some loose. Can we get that back up, please, out the back?
Yeah, please.
Because there's some loose criteria around it, but I think Bowen deserves to. I think
he won't win.
He won't win. Frawling will win it.
He won't
because of that. You know what you just said, how you broke it down.
Frawling
for sure. Frawling been killing all year.
Right. 6-man, Jordan Jet, Tarangi. I've gone Chris Golding because he's eligible.
Oh my goodness.
He wasn't on the nominees.
Dude, how you putting him on there? He's not even a nominee.
He's not even nominated.
I think he'll get late inclusion.
You got it.
I hear you though, because if he...
Right now he's not eligible.
Right.
But by the end of the year, if he comes off the bench, he'll be eligible and he's got to win it.
It's an interesting one. So the criteria is if you played more games off the bench than you do start. And right now he doesn't meet that.
Not yet.
But if he continues to come off the bench, he will. He will. What, is he going to be a late inclusion on the nominees list?
I don't know, but he will be eligible by the
last game.
Yeah.
Is on the day of the awards.
Look, I don't know how the NBL... Hey, Jeremy...
That game to be in? Oh,
Jeremy, I don't know what you do here, but if he is eligible, come the time we go to the NBL Awards night, he's got to win it. He has to.
I missed the last little bit there. I know we can't bring it up again.
Coach of the year.
Coach of the year. Here it comes. Coach. Well, most improved. Okay, so Barlow.
This is another...
It's a grey area.
It is a grey area.
It's a grey area. So, and I think it's an interesting question about this award. So the criteria changed, the wording changed to say that you assess a significant improvement by looking over the course of an entire player's career. So essentially, the underlying question is: can a player who gets back to form that he had previously in the NBL, can he win most improved?
See, I've got him because he's in the nominees list.
Sure.
But I would argue, and as great as Dave Barlow, he's been exceptional this year.
Yeah.
He would have had, I'll say, 3 minimum better NBL seasons than he's had this year. And then with the criteria, I don't think he can be most improved based on the looseness of the word.
Well, see, but then the flip side is I can understand if you go, well, I look at his entire career and I see, all right, he was great for a while. Really, really good, right? Second leading scorer on a championship team, 4-time champion. But then injuries, his role diminished, and he wasn't producing anywhere at this level for a number of years, maybe 2 or 3 years. And then there's been a really significant spike. So you go, okay, I'm not just looking at this year to last year. I'm looking at this year to the last few years. It's a difficult one, and he has shown tremendous improvement. And I think it should just be open slather, and all forms of improvement should be able to be considered. Nick Kay also has gone from a productive starter, his first 3 years in the league, to an all-NBL first team kind of guy, which is a big leap.
Who'd you have for coach of the year?
Either Gaze, if they finish first, or Vickerman.
Geez, you threw some asterisks out.
They finished first.
Who'd you have?
I went with Vickerman.
Okay.
Yeah.
I went with Trevor Gleeson. Now, I just think everybody's had their words to say about everyone, about the Perth Wildcats. Should have a third import. They've had injuries, all the rest of it. I still, when I look at Sydney's roster, I look at Melbourne's roster, I think it's more talented. I think at some point, I think they might fall a little short because they don't have a huge third scorer. And as much as I hate to agree with Homicide at different points, he made good points.
Yeah.
But that's why I've got him.
Rob Beveridge would have to be a guy that you'd consider as well, to have that team and, you know, the mishmash of talent and how it all fits together, be right in the mix for the playoffs 2 weeks out. But for me, Vickerman, the thing that tips him over for me is the buy-in that he's got from all that talent. You can have a team that's loaded in talent, but to have the level of buy-in where guys like DJ Kennedy, Mitch McCarron, Chris Golding, they all are happy to come off the bench. Well, not happy, but they'll do it. That's pretty impressive. NBL.com is the best place to see. If you haven't seen the award nominees yet, make sure you jump on. It is going to be interesting because the last game is on the day of the NBL Award Gala. So how they're going to give Chris Golding the 6th Man of the Year, I don't know, but I look forward to him accepting it on the night. All right, games, you don't miss a beat over the weekend. Liam, what should we have missed, or what did we miss, and what should we now look at? Let's start in Brisbane, where Cam Bairstow put it on the deck and laid it in. It was very, very nice. Keep an eye on Tyrell Harrison.
Oh, there it is.
Off the bench. Tyrell Harrison just showing how it was done.
This is a little bit of what happens. This happens at OKC. They all do the Euro set with Russell Westbrook.
This guy was shooting for the MG, Corey, and he was not wearing a suit.
Okay.
Or a jacket or anything, and that happened.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Jeez, he's nearly
That was, you needed to
He
get...
needs new glasses, I think.
That's what you need. You need to wipe the...
No excuse.
The lenses off. Wow.
Dwayne McClain.
Here's Jacob Wiley in the block. Got called for the travel.
Incredible travel.
Watch the travel here from the other angle. Ding, 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 ding.
Dang.
Even Mike Kelly's got to laugh.
Believe. Something going on with the new nets there in Cairns the other night.
Oh.
The ball wasn't falling through.
Wouldn't happen with the chain nets.
So Majuk giving his captain a little something after the big game.
Daniel Johnson didn't give much.
Keep an eye on Bogey here.
Oh.
Looking a little bit like Steve Nash. I wish he had gone on with it for a bit.
Yeah. Had perfect control there. Here we go.
Look at these ladies in the purple behind the huddle. This is what happens, Sydney, when you win on your home floor and you give the fans a little something to cheer about. These girls they just got amongst it. And this guy was into it as well. Look at this guy here with the cheeseburgers. He really wanted those cheeseburgers.
I love the fact that he's sitting in a courtside seat, probably paying a fair bit of money for it, and he's so desperately craving $1.92, which is one of the greatest initiatives the NBL's ever brought in. But yeah, interesting. But good on you, Liam Santamaria doesn't miss a beat. Of course, studs and duds at NBL.com.au. Now, there's Anthony Davis, this whole situation, Porzingis at the Knicks. The NBA do such a wonderful job when it comes to trade and off-court drama and all the rest of it. So what we thought we'd do is maybe just quickly look, if we could have and bring trades into the NBL, and we've got the trading deadline this Thursday, what would you do? Hashtag NBL Overtime. Find us on Twitter and throw us anything. And as we always like in these type of ideas, the more unrealistic you throw towards us, the more we'll enjoy it. Have you got something for us? All right, so what about... You're talking about just for this season? Just for this season right now.
And ignoring future years on contract.
Yeah, that's future. Don't worry about the future, mate. Let's worry about now.
All right, well, how about this? Brisbane, they're trying to make the finals, they really need some defence, and especially in the backcourt. Illawarra could use some perimeter shooting. Who says no? Jason Kiddey for Jordan Jet.
Ooh. I like it.
Who says no?
Brisbane.
Why?
Because I think that Andre Lamanis has shown, in particular with bringing imports in and other guys, that he loves the nucleus that he's got and he's going to back them to the hilt. So just based purely on that, I think, although it does seem to work because defensively, Jordan Jets actually been really good defensive player of the year nominee as well. So I like
Maybe
it.
both teams say no.
How about, obviously, New Zealand are probably done. It'd take nearly a miracle for them to make the playoffs from here. And Sydney are right there, but that defensive intensity you spoke about, just the way the fall guy. How about Ty Wesley for David Ware coming into the playoffs?
What?
Imagine Ty Wesley in Sydney.
New Zealand are going to do that?
Well, they probably wouldn't, but I'm just unrealistically throwing it out there. I don't think they would do that, but keeping in mind that New Zealand are done.
Yeah, well, what
They can trade him back in the off-season. But I was thinking, imagine Ty Wesley at the Kings. You know, we watched about how good he was last year. You don't think he'd work at the Kings?
He would work at the Kings. That would be awesome. Then they would win the championship.
There you go. Look, you're right. I don't think New Zealand are going to give him up because he's had a good year. But, hey, I'm an unrealistic human being. I want to chain nets. And considering the current nets that are working in Cairns, maybe chain is where we should look at. What do you got?
I would go with Melo Trimble to Adelaide.
Ooh.
For who?
For cash.
For cash consideration. You want to see him in that system?
Lights out. Throw Sobey back at the 2. You rolling.
Has he got the defensive intensity to fit under Joey Ross?
Enough for Adelaide.
Enough
for Adelaide.
Well, while we're talking about Adelaide, what about this for the off-season? Anthony Drimmick. Adelaide need a backup point guard.
No doubt.
And New Zealand, they have both Illy and Weeks with another year to come on their contract. Now, has Illy and Weeks, has that worked as their point guard starting and point guard?
Nope.
I think they need an import point guard.
So do I.
And then they need Illy off the bench.
There you go.
So how about this?
You're going to be looking at my yes or no notes again.
Drimmick, 1 year left on his deal to New Zealand for Weeks. 1 year left on his deal. Who says no?
Drimmick's not going anywhere.
Adelaide probably say no because, as Joey says, well, he says about every single player gets in a scrap, but he says you always need an insert player who got in scrap in the game previous. So they love Drimmick. He's had a really good year and play for the Boomers. I think Adelaide says no. Although, Jared, that's not to, diminish the year Jared Weeks has had. I think as a point guard off the bench has been really good. And I think you're right. If they had an import point guard and Weeks is playing behind him, I think we'd even probably appreciate Jared Weeks a little bit more.
Corey Webster, he's got 2 years left on his deal. Daniel Greeder has 2 years left on his. Webster for Greeder in the off-season.
That's not happening. New Zealand will say no.
You think?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was so frustrated. We've spoken about New Zealand a million times, and we've spoken about Corey Webster a million times, and there's just moments. Defensively, he wasn't great again on Sunday night, but offensively, he is so frustrating.
Mate.
Because he can turn it on.
He really can.
You sit there and you're like, if this guy puts it all together, he's going to dominate the NBL again sometime soon, and hopefully, for him and the league as us fans, we do get to see it. Now, yes or no? Will Cairns have 3 new imports next season?
No.
Who stays?
This is yes or no.
Yeah. Has Jordan Jett had a better year than Cedric Jackson?
Yes.
Is Shea Ili a starting point guard in the NBL? I can't believe this.
I think they would be better with an import starting point guard.
Is Nick Kay a chance of playing the Boomers for the Boomers in the World Cup?
Has a chance.
If the Kings win the title, does Andrew Gaze retire as the coach? Go out on top?
Ooh, good question. I hope not.
Will Casper Ware have another look at the NBA?
Yes.
Is Josh Boone the difference between a title or not for Melbourne United? I think it was John Casey said he's the most important player 3 weeks ago, and he's been great and they're playing well. Is he the most important? Is he the difference?
Casper Ware is their most important, but certainly now that he's playing at that level, they're title favourites.
Will we see Sean Long in the NBL again once this season's done?
I'd hope so. I think if they're smart, they will sign him to a multi-year deal and give him an NBA clause.
Should the NBL try and play a finals game in the fever break? Momentum, the intrigue, everyone's going nuts, this is amazing, and then 2-week break. Should they try and play a game in the fever break?
If they can find 2 teams where it'll work, yeah.
Is Jordan greater than Brady?
1,000%.
Really? 1,000%?
1,000%.
They both got 6 now.
Yeah. How many three-peats Brady have?
None.
All right, then. Listen. Shout out to my man at Basketball Jersey World, B. That's all I'm trying to tell you. Ain't no way. It is nobody else in the country that's selling these authentic
You tagged me.
J's.
You tagged me on Instagram. If I just roll in, who do I ask
tag
for?
you?
You tagged me.
All right, I'm going to tag you. Just tell them Homicide sent you. It don't matter.
Is it free?
No. You get a nice discount. Just tell them Homicide sent you.
Okay.
They got plenty of these. The only place in Australia.
We've ran about 35 minutes overtime again. Do we have that photo of the more famous number 45 with the Bulls?
This is the last person that
There it is. So here we all...
Wearing a Shencher jersey.
Yes.
We thought that was a Jordan jersey. Apparently it is allegedly a Luke Shencher jersey. There you go. Shout out to the big man who...
Big sauce.
Luke.
Well, I know there's not a great deal of sun in Chicago, and clearly...
Shout out to Luke. There's a lot of snow.
There is a lot of snow. Coldest place in the planet the last couple of weeks. All right, we're out of here. Who would you build a team around? At NBL on Twitter. Hashtag NBL9. Hashtag NBL Overtime. Thursday night's going to be big. Huge doubleheader. All the 4 teams playing for 4th. Enjoy it. We'll see you next week.